Good morning, Otters. Hope you are all well and safe and healthy. So we are only got a very few pages left of the story. Tomorrow we'll be starting a new book, so make sure you tune in to see what that is. So on Saturday morning we were down early, ready to be driven back to school. Our things had been packed by Hetty, and now Mrs. Doherty was fussing over us in the hall, trying to fit just one more cake into my tuck box and one more murder mystery into Daisy's. But perhaps you ought to stick to reading them for the moment, she told Daisy. I think you've experienced quite enough to last you a lifetime. Said Daisy, narrowing her eyes and staring off into the distance thoughtfully. Then the door from the garden banged open, and Lord Hastings was standing there in his Barber jacket, Millie and Toast Dog surging around his boots. There had been a sort of ceasefire since the end of the case. Lord and Lady Hastings were talking again, carefully and with many pauses, but talking all the same. None of us wanted to even breathe in case we jinxed it. "Daughter," he said. "Daughter's friend." For a moment it was as if we were back at the beginning of the holiday again, and none of the dreadful things had happened. "Hello, Daddy," said Daisy. "We're off to school." "So you are," said her father, walking towards us. Then he paused and rubbed his chest thoughtfully. "Probably a good thing," he added at last. "This house, not exactly the right place for you at the moment." "You'll be all right," said Daisy, and I couldn't tell whether she meant it as a question or not. "I always am," said Lord Hastings. "Things have a way of working out." He paused again, bouncing on his toes, and then stuck out his hand towards Daisy. Daisy took it very daintily, and then, all of a sudden, she threw herself forward and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Steady on," said Lord Hastings. "Daisy, come now, you're far too old for this." But as he said it, he lifted her up so her feet left the stones of the hall entirely. "I'm glad you didn't kill anyone," said Daisy into his ear. "I'm glad you're good." "So am I," said Lord Hastings. "It's a terrible relief, I can tell you. Do you know, I started to wonder if I had ill-wished Mr. Curtis's death?" Daisy burst out laughing. "Silly Daddy," she said, letting go of him and leaping to the ground again. "As if you could." "And you could?" asked her father. "I," said Daisy, "can do anything. And even though she doesn't like to mention it, so can Hazel." She grinned at me, and after a moment I smiled back at her. Lord Hastings shuffled off towards the billiard room, thumping Toast Dog on his fat behind and sighing. I hoped he would be all right. At least he had Chapman, Hetty and Mrs. Doherty to look after him. "Good old Watson," said Daisy. She took my hand and squeezed it. "I'm glad you've been here this holiday. Don't tell anyone, but it would have been awful without you." "You too," I said, and I decided that being friends with Daisy was worth all the murders in the world. "Detective Society forever," said Daisy. "Detective Society forever," I agreed. As we shook hands there in the hall, I felt happy again at last. On Sunday morning, the last day of holiday before the summer term, I woke up in my narrow, lumpy bed at Deepdean. The window was open, and chilly April morning air was gushing in and creeping under our blankets and sheets. Beanie whimpered and wriggled lower in her bed. Kitty snored, and Lavinia sighed and rolled over like a heavy whale. I could smell the breakfast porridge burning downstairs, and when I turned my head, I saw my trunk gaping open, still only half unpacked. I knew I would catch it from Matron when she saw in, and came in, and I knew I would catch it from Matron when she came in and saw it. I sat up, my school pyjamas scratching my neck and arms, and took a deep breath. Daisy bounced up out of bed, throwing off her blankets in one wild moment, and waved at me. "Hello, Hazel," she said. "Back to the boredom. Cabbage and Latin for miles and no murder anywhere. Why are you smiling?" "No reason," I said. And just like that, I wasn't homesick anymore. Daisy's Guide to Fallingford. Just as we did in our last important case, Hazel has asked me to give an explanation of the most difficult words in her notes. I think Hazel was far too worried, but she did insist, and I do like to give in to her from time to time, just so she never knows what to expect. Apoplectic. This means when you are so full of anger that it looks like you're about to pop. Arsenic. A nasty poison that makes you die in disgusting ways. But because it is also in lots of household things, It is very easy to get hold of, which is why many murderers use it. Automaton, another word for robot. Blancmange, a wobbly pudding made from milk. It is sweet but dull, nursery food really. Buck up, what you say to someone to remind them that although bad things do happen, it is important to carry on regardless. Bun and break. This is a school word that is nevertheless important in all parts of life. It means pausing what you are doing to have something sweet and delicious, like cake or biscuit or buns. Combis, combinations. We talked about this in class. A word for under things that are purely functional rather than nice. Convalesce. Something that people have to do after they have been ill. It means resting till you are better. Dysentery. A truly horrid illness where you can't keep anything in at all. In the end, you shrivel up and die. Quite often, when people are poisoned with arsenic, the silly doctors mistake its symptoms for dysentery. For a song. This is a slang term that means very cheaply. Governess. A sort of mistress who teaches lessons to girls at home, rather than in school. Mummy makes me have one each holes, which is very tiresome. Grain. Quite apart from being a word for a part of wheat, it is also the way that doctors measure doses of poison. Holes, a slang word for holidays. Hothouse, another word for conservatory where you can grow flowers and fruits even in the winter. India rubber. This comes from trees in the empire and can be used to make bouncy balls and other useful items. It is very stretchy. Kleptomaniac. A sort of illness that some well-off people have, where they can't seem to stop pinching other people's things. I wonder in the story who suffered from this. Pigskin, a sort of leather that handbags are made from. It's very practical. Popinjay. This is an old word for parrot, but it's much nicer than parrot, I think. Raffles, a famous character from a book. He is a master thief and very clever. I'd rather admire him, although Hazel thinks that's very wrong. Rowing, another word for arguing. Grown-ups do it very often. Sardines. This is a game where one person hides and everyone else goes to look for them. When you find them, you have to squash into their hiding place with them, so you end up squeezed together like sardines. Tooth mug. The mug that you keep your toothbrush in, of course. And so we are done with Arsenic for Tea. So this book is the second in a series. Year 5 are currently reading A Murder Most Unladylike, which is the first one. And the second one of this is First Class Murder, I believe. But I might have to double check that. But yeah, they are very good books, as you can tell. So, a couple of hints about our next book. It is non-fiction, and it's very funny. I thought we could all do a little bit of a laugh, as well as learning some new facts. So, I hope you have a fantastic day. Stay inside, keep washing your hands, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.